Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. The Witness works through many agents, all of whom are working to accomplish a singular objective. But just because they are united in purpose does not mean that they are not in competition with each other. Particularly when one is striving to attain something such as the sword logic. To show weakness in any regard would be to falter and die, and so the Witness's operatives work cooperatively, but not with complete trust in each other. Even those who know each other well and hold a close, if not familial, connection, such as the three sibling hive gods, Oryx, Savathun, and Xivu Arath, they would kill each other regularly when such opportunities arose, because it was what would make them stronger in the eyes of the sword logic, and given their functional immortality, such constant conflict and betrayal did not have huge consequences aside from those of death in the moment. Today we'll be looking into a relationship of this nature that is fraught with distrust, namely the relationship between the Witch Queen Savathun and Rhulk, the first disciple of the Witness. Rhulk holds the position of seniority over all the Hive, given that they were created by his actions and they owe their strength to the worm gods in his thrall. However, this isn't to say that his position is unassailable and that he isn't insecure in his own position. He believes that he was posted to his position in Savathun's throne world as punishment for his failure with the Arslid, a species that the Witness wished to make use of. Whether this is just Rhulk's perspective, or whether it's actually a punishment from the Witness is unclear, but regardless, he was not particularly pleased by it, and he treated Savathun just as she would treat him, with a fair degree of suspicion, caution, and with the occasional desire to make actions and moves that would create visible discomfort within their opponent. One of the first moves Rhulk would make within Savathun's throne world would be to establish the facilities required to create a dark army. At the time it was an army of the Hive, and these facilities, which are located deep in Rhulk's dark city, would be used for the purpose of creating the Hive symbiote worms, the worms that were the product of Shaita, the Worm Mother. This is something that we learn a little more about thanks to Mara Sov, who sheds some light on the Dark City and everything going on within it during the Parasite mission. Take a listen.
Mara, we found a door. It's like the inside of a pyramid.
A gateway to the Dark City, built by that which commands the nearby pyramid.
The Witness.
Not the Witness itself, but a disciple.
So what is this place exactly?
A factory, you might call it. Built for the growth and facilitation of those like the very parasite you now hold. Go, see for yourself.
Not to be rude, but how do you know that?
One does not engage with the all-powerful without first gathering the most valuable tool in war. Knowledge. Shortly after gaining her new power, Savathun returned to her throne world, filled it with light, stamped out whatever poisons the Witness's disciple had spread throughout, including within that factory. And yet, I believe Savathun far too cunning than to completely eradicate the potential power of that place.
An entire city of darkness, right in the middle of Savathun's home. And she did nothing to stop it?
Why would she? At the time, it benefited her. Endless worms for an endless army.
Savathun might have abandoned the Dark City as she ascended to the light, but she wasn't exactly thrilled at Rhulk establishing such a complex in her throne world to begin with. She clearly viewed it as her place of power and her domain to control. We know this thanks to the lore of the Warlock raid armor from the Vow of the Disciple. Take a listen to this excerpt, the first of a few from Rhulk's perspective. It takes no foresight, nor does it require any sort of precognition to hypothesize how exactly this particular Queen of the Hive reacted to the development of new establishments in her throne world, my Witness. Acquiescence it was decidedly not. It would be dishonest of me to claim no delight from her indignation, though I assure you, these simple pleasures are born out of nothing more than a desire to see her succeed, while remaining in our care. Too much recoil on our part from confrontation with Savathun would surely beget a feeling of true autonomy for her, and while my undying trust for you, my witness, is eternally absolute, I remain circumspect in regard to any hidden intentions Savathun may see to fruition were she allowed to. She remains, after all, and as you know, conniving and opportunistic. I am, however, hopeful that in due time these concerns will fade. Hopeful, my witness, but not convinced. Begrudging as she may be, and with the continued cooperation of Shaita, construction of the larvae breeding chambers has commenced. The armies of Oryx and Shuvor-Arath will grow exponentially in short order. Should they envision future conquests, they will indeed have the tools to make it so, as is your wish, my witness. Should Savathun desire to play cards in contrast to our own, I will, without hesitation, bring to mind that she made her choice long ago, and that only if she wishes for eternal release should she dare to betray it. Rulk and Savathun's relationship is clearly an adversarial one in this way, and it's one that frequently puts them at odds. It's also one that makes me wonder if Savathun went about Rulk's business and worked to sabotage his performance in other ways. Finch in the Throne World says that Rulk was a thorn in Savathun's side for eons, and again it makes me wonder if she continually set him up to fail as a result. A sort of tit-for-tat motion, one of an eye for an eye on small, constant jives in the grand scheme of things, but ones that would momentarily be a nuisance to either party. We can't confirm any of this, but there are great hints that are given to us that at a certain point Rulk was once again released upon the universe, and was yet again subjected to some form of failure, and that this might have been the cause of Savathun. But we can't be sure. Take a listen to this for yourself, and let me know what you think. I personally believe that there's no way this would have been mentioned were it not for the fact that Savathun was deliberately trying to set the disciple of the witness up for failure. Again, let me know what you think after having heard this. Conquest. Warming as the long-ago memory of blue sun on my face, all the while reminding me of the exhilaration of existing outside the throne world, if only for a short time. I live in this glory, a rare opportunity to step away from exile within that ascendant chrysalis, as I gather more cunning from my sparring with the witch. Surely you placed me as her minder, my witness, as a hardship to hone my intrigue. But in this moment, astride a pyramid once more, with an upstart empire splayed before me, my purpose is truer than any found carved in the wretched stones of the globe that formed me. Kalaranda flashes beneath my gaze. Yellow haze streaks ruby clouds. The vaulted ring surrounding Kalaranda shatters into a shimmer-like wind-blown sand, a prescription against the folly of confidence writ across a million ceramic shards. I live in this glory because the full purity of their extinction was stolen from me. Because without predication of my own, a cult had sprouted in apocalyptic jubilation of the darkness and blessed oblivion. They grew for years in the shadows, drawing the disillusioned from the poorest and the wealthiest. These polyps of the long shadow sensed, as if by providence, a coming end, and believed the breaking of the vaulted ring to be the final sign. They would ascend and bring their kind with them. Moments before their world was mine, their enzymatic armaments scrubbed all life from this wet rock. A guileful theft, triggered by my own glorious coming. And there was nothing calling to the Witch Queen's involvement, save for the twist in her face that betrayed restrained delight. That last line, needless to say, makes me really suspicious, as does the idea that a cult that deceives an entire people is entirely something that sounds like it comes from Savathun's playbook. It seems really clear that Savathun was very happy to set Rulk up for failure, and it makes me wonder if it was indeed a part of her plan to keep him grounded in a sense, maybe in the lesser graces of the Witness. It's not clear, but either way, I think it's fair to say that she may have been subtly involved with what happened at Kalorunda. Perhaps there was a purpose to it, perhaps it was ultimately nothing. Maybe this is just a demonstration of the kind of relationship that Savathun and the Disciple had with each other, one where they were constantly poking back and forth, challenging each other, but also very much at odds with each other. Not doing so out of some cooperative sense of team building, but more getting back at each other in petty ways where possible. It is not at all unlike Savathun to play a hand like this. But, that being said, the next interaction between the Witch Queen and Rulk would be very different. At least the next one we know of. This would be a moment that would change her, and I think it is fair to say that it is one of the most important points in the entire story. This next moment is going to be after we, the Guardians, had entered the picture. It's going to be after the Hive had begun their long invasion of Sol, and it's also going to be after the events of the Taken King, at the death of Savathun's brother, Oryx. She builds a palace here in her hiding place, and I perceive through her self-assurance, for all her grandiose treatises on secrets, the Hive Princess all but screams, "Look upon me." And so I look upon her today, my Witness, absent a brother. Loss, true and consequential loss, is new to her palate, but she hides her distaste for the bitter well. I address her. Savathun, your brother is no more. He is absent from the final shape of things, as he always must be. But I sense a foreign hand at work. You would accuse rather than state, Rulk. She clothes herself in playful tones. I have played a role in more of my brother's deaths than not. So very true. Congratulations, then. I suppose after so many eons of killing one another to build your strength, his final end must feel like quite the accomplishment. No more must your wits dabble against his play mortality. Now, only matters of consequence will occupy your precious time. And thankfully, I find myself well provisioned now for any conflict. Ah, I had nearly forgotten. You are the heir apparent to Oryx's dominion, yes? I know you Hive are loath to accept gifts rather than seize them. Armies, fleets, and of course, the Taken. If I had seen this coming, perhaps I could have even prepared to secure the secret of taking itself. I bark in amusement. She makes no attempt to hide her distaste for the laughter of my kind, and it is indulgence itself to let it flow freely. Clever, always one step ahead. The Taken will serve you well against the Guardians, until they slay you just the same. My sweet, vile brother would look at a scalpel and see a hammer. I am not him. Yes, you do seem to find much more creative uses for your playthings. A pity that will become ever so challenging for you moving forward. Challenging? I do not see confusion cross her face. I savor the scent. Until now, the shadow from which you skulked has been your brother's. Without the Taken King to cast your swaddling shade, you stand naked in the sun for all to see, yes? No shadows, no hiding, no tricks. Just the Guardians and their god-slaying weapons. I have little to fear from the sun, she insists. But there is no twist in her face. No secret delight. Rulk might believe that he was the one to break the news to Savathun, but I think it's possible that she might have had advanced warning of his peril. This small snippet of information that informs me of this is one that very well could be a lie, as it comes from the Altar of Reflection and from Savathun. For those of you who don't know this, by the way, the Altar of Reflection is, problematic. How do I best put this? Savathûn gives multiple contradictory statements on the nature of things, so anything that comes from the altar is very suspect in itself. Her statements also always begin with the game that she plays with us, which tells us that she is telling us 2 truths and 2 lies. And yeah, that's always going to make me suspicious of anything that's said at the altar, so let's take a listen to this just for the sake of context. But again, remember, this could all be lies.
It was thrilling to find a riddle that Oryx had missed. But of course, his cunning could never defeat mine. Do you know the last time I spoke with my brother? It was just before you killed him. I told him he would die, and he said, "I am always glad to die."
Now again, the altar potentially tells lies, as does Savathûn, so this clip should be taken with a pinch of salt. But I think this moment adds a lot more interesting context to the relationship between Savathûn and her brother Oryx, if it's true. They were supposedly estranged from each other when Oryx had gained so much power that it restricted Savathûn's developments. We actually portrayed this moment in Dynasty, when Savathûn and her brood retreated into the black hole that the Harmony system was located around, and Xivu Arath retreated with her war moons into deep space. This was a moment at which the Hive siblings were effectively cut off from each other. And that makes this communication kind of extraordinary. Either it was a once-off communication before the death of her brother, which implies that it was something incredible that broke from the typical tradition of cutting herself off that Savathûn had established, or it implies that there was communication between the siblings all along, and that the Books of Sorrow were in fact lying to us, and that there was always communication, and there wasn't some kind of estranged relationship between Oryx and his siblings. It's still not clear at all, and I don't know where this puts us for the rest of it. Maybe this conversation didn't even happen. But I think it is important if it did, because if this is where Savathûn landed, knowing that it would be safer to bet against her brother than against the Guardians, maybe this is a key moment at which she knew and was informed by her plans that ultimately she would have to take the light to ascend to a greater degree of power. And therefore perhaps Rilke's assertions from the first entry we read today, stating that Savathûn might have the stomach to play cards of her own, wasn't too far off the mark. Those cards that Savathûn did play, of course, did result in her taking the light, and that's what we'll be looking into next. We'll be looking at the moments after her death and rebirth, thanks to Imaru, her ghost. We'll be looking at the lore of the exotic glaives, and how she betrayed Rilke and the Witness. But that's all from me for now. I didn't see too many comments in the top comments in the previous video about a raid lore playlist, but I'll see about making one anyway. This is so many videos that I think it might be worth it. So, if that's something you guys want, go ahead and continue to let me know down below in the comments section. Either way, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, all that typical stuff. But, as per usual, know that your viewership is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Parodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.